Welcome to the Cross in the Desert, speaking hope and freedom to Iran. My name is Randy Noble, and I'm very glad that you tuned in to this week's program. On April 9th, 1945, Lutheran pastor and theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer was executed by hanging in the Flossenburg concentration camp just 3 weeks prior to the U.S. liberation. He had been arrested and convicted in a conspiracy assassination plot against Hitler. Eberhard Bethge, one of Bonhoeffer's students, writes of a man who witnessed the execution, quoting him as saying, "I saw Pastor Bonhoeffer kneeling on the floor praying fervently to God. At the place of execution, he again said a short prayer and then climbed the steps up to the gallows, brave and composed. His death ensured after a few seconds. In the almost 50 years that I worked as a doctor, I have hardly ever seen a man die so completely submissive to the will of God." Bonhoeffer loved God. He was not afraid to speak out. His life and ministry was dedicated to the lordship of Christ. He sacrificed his reputation on the altar of submission at a time when the world was plunged into a bloody conflict with Germany and loudly proclaimed God's truth at the risk of his own life. In his classic book, The Cost of Discipleship, Bonhoeffer issued a clarion call, a summons to awaken the Christian church out of slumber and back to obedience in knowing Jesus and following him. He lived what he preached, and at the end of his life, he set an example of what true submission and obedience to Christ looked like. One of the most famous quotes by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and here's a picture of him here, with the quote, he said, "Silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act." Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I want to tell you a little bit about my dear brother and friend, Saeed Abedini, who now is sitting in the dark hole of solitary confinement in Evin Prison. He will be there for the next 18 days in solitary confinement, a place where he says he fears the most of losing his perspective and losing his memory. My dear brother is suffering from internal bleeding and also perhaps organ failure. He has been in Evin Prison for over 200 days. He's there because of his Christian faith. Saeed, back in July of 2012, traveled to Iran to build orphanages, and the Revolutionary Guard of Iran captured and arrested him, charging him with being part of the underground church and talking to Muslims about Jesus. And Saeed Abedini is illegally and being held against his will in Evin Prison. He is an American pastor, husband, and an American citizen. Where has the Obama administration been? In the 200 days plus that Saeed Abedini has been in prison in Evin, there has been one statement by the Secretary of State, John Kerry, and we're applauding him for speaking out. But largely, this administration has been silent. They have been silent in the face of evil. Our brother is suffering against his will. And what's his crime? Building orphanages? Being a Christian? Our job here as Americans is to bring our own home. The American spirit of freedom is that we love our people, that we speak up for them, that we stand up for them in the face of evil. Just about a week ago, our President Obama, took the time out to get on the phone and congratulate Jason Collins, a gay basketball player, for coming out of the closet and revealing his sexual orientation. Obama took the time to congratulate him. What's wrong with Pastor Abedini? Why won't our president stand up for this American citizen, pastor and husband of 2 beautiful children and a beautiful wife? Why won't he take the time to stand up and speak out and demand that Iran return him, Demand that he get proper medical care. Why is there such silence in the face of evil? This should not be. My friend Nagma has spent so much of her own personal time and money raising awareness of her husband. There are many, many people on Facebook, including myself, that work tirelessly around the clock to speak out and pray for Pastor Saeed Abedini. The American Center for Law and Justice with Jay and Jordan Sekulow and Fox News have been so beautiful, so committed to doing what is right to speak out to Iran and demand his release. But I believe that if our president would stand up and issue a demand that Iran stop torturing and beating Pastor Saeed and release him unconditionally, I believe they would take heed and listen to him. We need a leader with conviction and compassion and not ruled by the god of political correctness. I remember back in 1987 or 88, I believe, then President Ronald Reagan stood at the Berlin Wall and addressed the Russian President, Soviet Union, Gorbachev. He said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." And you know the rest was history. In 1989, the Berlin Wall was removed. And there was freedom, religious freedom, in the Soviet Union for the first time in decades. A character, a man of compassion and conviction, our past President Ronald Reagan, who was not afraid to stand up in the face of evil and to call the Soviet Union and communism an evil ideology. Bonhoeffer said, "Silence in the face of evil is itself evil." When I look at the scriptures, I see our God, how he deals with evil. In Psalm chapter 50, verse 3, our God approaches, and he is not silent. Fire devours everything in his way, and a great storm rages around him. Our God approaches, and he is not silent. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 12, the Lord's eyes are on those who do what he approves. His ears hear their prayer, but the Lord confronts those who do evil. Our God is not silent in the face of evil. He confronts evil. He's a holy God. Well, let me tell you what Nagma is doing. She has organized with many, many people a special day of prayer for Saeed and all the other persecuted Christians around the world. It's going to be Sunday, May 19th. And this is an opportunity for you, of a member of a church, congregation, or synagogue, to talk to your pastor and ask that on that specific day he would read about Saeed's case, what has happened to his life, why he was arrested and put in Evin prison. Take some time to bring awareness to him, to urge people to sign the petition for Saeed at SaveSaeed.org, and to write a letter, and to encourage our brother who is going through an incredibly difficult time. Sunday, May 19th is a pivotal day of prayer and fasting all over this nation for Saeed. So while our own president seems to remain silent, our God will not. Our God has called us together to pray and to cry out to him. The eyes of the Lord, the scripture says, are on those who do what he approves. His ears hear their prayers, and the Lord does confront what is evil. He is not silent. So mark this on your calendar. Sunday, May 19th, is a special day set aside for prayer for Saeed. You know, we as Christians are obedient to our government, and we're not civilly disobedient, but we have the right as citizens to cry out and to urge our president to do what is right. Bonhoeffer was not afraid. He confronted the evil in his own day. He saw Hitler as a destructive person, and he was part of a plot, whether you agree with that or not, to see that this man was removed. I don't say that. I would not believe to do that. But what I am saying is that Bonhoeffer was not afraid to confront evil in his day. He was not afraid to speak out. And he is an example of who you and I should be, not to be silent in the face of evil, but to do what is right and to bring justice to injustices in the world. Our God approaches, and he is not silent, and neither should his people be. So as we think about Saeed, I want to also call attention to you that in this taping, there is just 2 days to his 33rd birthday. He will be 33 years old. And where is he spending his 33rd birthday? In the dark, deep hole of solitary confinement in Evin Prison. What can you and I do in the face of evil? We're not silent. We can pray and speak out. And God will hear our prayers. And we believe that God will move for his glory and for the good of his servant Saeed, when his people come together and cry out to him in a corporate way. We know our God is holy. We know he's not silent. He always does what is right. He always can be trusted. I think of so many examples of prayer, and I think of the way that the Bible talks about prayer. And what I want to do is end this time together with a beautiful psalm, something you can think about as you approach the day of prayer on May 19th for Saeed. The Psalm 61 is a beautiful example of the kind of prayer we can pray. O God, listen to my cry, hear my prayer. From the ends of the earth I cry to you for help when my heart is overwhelmed. Lead me to the towering rock of safety, for you are my safe refuge, a fortress where my enemies cannot reach me. A beautiful description of prayer from Psalm 61. If you would like to join all of us on Facebook to pray and speak out for Pastor Saeed Abedini, please come to my Facebook page, Randy L. Noble, or also go to Nagma's Facebook page, Nagma, that is Naghmeh, Abedini, Abedini. You can go to either one of our pages. We have the links there for SaveSaeed.org and also the petition for the National Day of Prayer. And you too can get involved in signing the petition for Saeed's release through the ACLJ, and also crafting a letter, perhaps in your own words, and sending it to Saeed in Evin Prison. In this way, I believe you and me are doing what God would have us do. We're not silent in the face of evil. We're definitely speaking out. We're definitely doing something to bring our dear brother home. And the number one thing you can do is to please set aside some of this personal time on Sunday, May 19th, and join Christians literally all over the world praying for Saeed's release and freedom from Evin Prison. Please come to my Facebook page, Randy L. Noble, and I have many postings there about the happenings of Pastor Saeed and also the happenings in Iran. Thank you so much for joining me this evening on this edition of The Cross in the Desert. I will see you in just 1 week, and we'll continue our series, Speaking Hope and Freedom to Iran. Good night, and God bless you.